Good day and welcome, America and beyond. I'm Tom Donahue for Tom Donahue Reports in the briefing. More files that were released, tens of thousands of files. Sadly, so many of them are redacted. So many of them cannot be found. A lot of botched files, meaning some of the innocent victims were re-victimized because their identities were not concealed. So that was the big part of the job, not concealing Donald Trump and prominent business people and politicos and political honchos from the Democrat and Republican parties and beyond, and those of European royalty. So the cover-up continues, but thankfully we have a few honorable congressional leaders. I say leaders not that they're in the leadership position, but they're spearheading this investigation, and they're the ones that helped bring the pressure points to the verge of finally getting these documents released, forcing Trump's hand, forcing Trump's administration's hand. Now, as of today, we found out that there were 16 documents that were removed from the DOJ website suspiciously. So the article that was actually the original source and reporting, and then others carried forward with this. They depended on the AP, and the headline read, "At least 16 files have disappeared from the DOJ website for documents related to Epstein." So they appeared, and then they went, whoa, a little too much. And they went back to look, and they're like, they're gone. So we have a lot of suspicious and strange activities relating to this DOJ website and the release of the documents. Now, on the last podcast that I released, although delayed, it was recorded earlier, we did talk about the unanimous congressional votes, with that one exception, in Congress, one knucklehead, for the passage, the Epstein Files Transparency Act. And it's supposed to force the hand of all documents with minor redactions to protect the innocent, protect the victims, but all other photographic, video. I've not seen any videos mentioned that have been released. But Representative Massey and Rohana, Democrat, they're going to put the pressure, continue to put the pressure to force their hand. There's even talk of articles of impeachment against Bondi for not meeting the deadline and for lack of cooperation and explanation of what's going on. So Massey and Kahana trash Bondi and Trump DOJ on the Epstein files. They're flouting the letter of the law. Impeachable. Pam Bondi defied federal law by erasing Epstein photos to protect Trump. So there's been talk that there's been erasures, there's been redactions. So we got, essentially it's tampering and manipulating what files they have. And we just don't know to what extent the chicanery and the skullduggery that's occurred. I mean, this is a massive, full-blown cover-up and conspiracy against the American people and against the congressional branch of government, because they're not abiding by the law. And this was, we're talking just one single holdout. When the tide rose and when the dam burst and the avalanche fell, the Congress, meaning the House and the Senate, just said, "Whoa, they're hopping off the Trump train." And that they're going to do their job, and they're going to follow the law, and they're going to do the right thing by the American people and the survivors, the victims, and really for humanity, let alone women's rights. Actually, at that time they were children, teenagers. They were underage. So it's not that many of them wanted to do this, and they weren't just coaxed; they were pressured. When that discharge petition was released, people said, "We don't want to be on the other side of this issue, and there's nothing we can do now." So because it was guaranteed passage, that's why everybody jumped on this moving freight train that didn't have Trump's name on it and control. And so they were able to pull the levers themselves and take back their power. So in these files that have been released and these photos, of course, there's many of Clinton in very dubious and questionable positions, if you will. And strangely enough, This was a story that just broke. It says Bill Clinton calls on Trump to release the full Epstein files. He says someone is being protected. So he's willing to say, hey, put it all out there. All the photos and, the parties I was at and all. He's like basically saying that. And if Bill Clinton's saying this, he knows that Trump's in some hot water here, and he's deeper than you think. But if you're someone's best friend and you spent a lot of time with, I mean, they were each other's wingman when they went out and these parties and events. But this relationship, if someone's your best friend for more than 10 years and you call him a terrific guy and you already know that he likes him, on the young side. And then Donald Trump had his beauty contest that he, bought into and controlled. And that was Miss Teenage, pageants. So Trump liked being around those youngins too. And then, of course, all his wives were younger than him. And the girlfriends and the porn stars and the models and et cetera, et cetera. So let me just say this. I don't think Trump actually did anything with young girls, okay? I don't know if Bill Clinton did, but I'm sure his hands were grabby and was touching whatever was close to him, okay? But I had mentioned in a previous podcast, if Michael Wolff, if Epstein's brother and others are correct that there are photographs of Trump with young girls on his lap at the mansion, I believe it would have been in Palm Beach, Florida, and if they were pointing to a spot on his pants, and if those photos were shown to these people, and if they did exist and they were at the Epstein estate, somebody's got them, okay? But we don't know 100%. But we do know that Trump visited his New York mansion many, many times, not too far away from Trump Tower. We do know that he's visited his Palm Beach mansion many, many times. We do know that he was at Mar-a-Lago many, many times. We know that they talked on the phone a lot. And then we know about the birthday card. Senator Rand Paul says, partial release of the Epstein files, big mistake for the Trump administration. Another article here, FBI ignored Epstein child porn warning for nearly 10 years. That was a story from Newsmax. One of the sisters, a woman, who filed a sexual complaint in 1996 against Epstein, furnishing this to the FBI, has been vindicated after the DOJ in their document dump. In this release, there was the actual physical document showing that this complaint was taken, it was filed with the FBI, and they did not act on it. So if this would have been acted on in the early days of the Epstein sexual rampage, the sex trafficking and the sex abuse, it could have been stopped, but rather it just continued on for years and years. So sadly, the FBI under Bill Clinton, so that'd be another interesting angle to look into. Was Clinton, did he have knowledge of this? And did he help? Because he was also friends, maybe not best friends like Trump, but they're certainly very friendly with Epstein. Maybe they were competing to be best buds. Who knows? But we do know that Epstein declared to many, many people, and it's of record, that he and Donald Trump were very best friends. He was his best friend. Lawmakers hammered DOJ over Epstein files release with all the redactions, the tens of thousands of missing files that they say, oh, we're going to get to them. Well, they didn't meet the 30-day deadline, and they've had this full year to work on all this. They knew this was coming, potentially, even though Trump stonewalled and, tried to obstruct and obfuscate to no avail. Now, here's Trump saying it's a terrible thing. And he slams the Epstein files release and rages at the Republicans pushing for it. He talked about he didn't want to see this happen to Clinton. He didn't want to see this happen to Larry Summers. He didn't want to see this happen to Prince Andrew. And all, excuse me, hello. It's just like he feels bad for Maxine Gazelle Maxwell. We've gotten into the whole cozy camp that she's at. Oh, the only one in BOP history, male or female, with sex abuse and sex trafficking charges that was ever allowed in a lesser secure facility, namely a camp. It's never been done in the history of the BOP. It's against all the federal guidelines, all the federal rules and laws pertaining to custody and security and safety. I mentioned earlier, Pam Bondi, based on the fact that she has been resistant, her department, in this release of all, not just some, but all the documents, and then defying federal law by erasing Epstein photos to protect Trump and to removing documents that were already supposedly, uploaded and available to the public that have been taken down. Now, when they first released the documents and then made them available online to the DOJ's website, they found that you would type in Trump's name and only like maybe 2 or 3 things would come up. You type in some other names and more indexing to and connections to documents came up, but still not anywhere near what it should have been. So the website itself had glitches, missing documents, tons of redactions, misfires with the website. The search feature was essentially either malfunctioning or purposely designed to not be searchable. The DOJ website relating to the Epstein documents and files has been intentionally, seemingly designed to thwart people from finding and researching these documents. Mediaite reports that the DOJ redacted names of politically exposed individuals in the Epstein files. And even though this was an article at Mediaite, this was a Fox News report. So even Fox is saying people are being protected. And that's against the law. There should be no favoritism. But if anyone had any doubts how close Maxwell was to all this, the Sun and the Express UK, both European publications, have a lot of these graphic photos, published, pertaining to Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew and various others. But the sight of seeing Bill Clinton in a hot tub and swimming with Ghislaine Maxwell and a mystery woman is very revolting. I mean, here's a woman that was so close to the power elite and was having, basically serving them up their appetizers, and that she was that close. I mean, here you got president or former president swimming with this woman, and she's sitting in a cozy camp and been convicted of sex trafficking, participated in the sexual escapades along with Epstein. So she didn't just serve up these young women and help. She recruited, she served them up, and she participated sexually in many instances. Yahoo News reports Bondi gets a jail time warning over the Epstein files cover-up. Now, Deputy AG, Trump's personal attorney, says a full DOJ release of the Epstein records could take a few more weeks. Oh, thanks. We appreciate that. So only a portion, and not all, which was required by law, have been released. And then you start looking at some of these documents, and they're completely, totally redacted, useless. But this Deputy AG, Trump's personal attorney, Todd Blanche, has no real answers for why Maxwell was moved to a camp. Now, he did bring up in a television interview on the Sunday programs that, she's under a lot of threat. She was under a lot of threats, and the BOP, for safety's sake, may have moved her. No, they could move her into solitary confinement. They can move her into a supermax and make sure that nobody has access to her. But a camp, even though it's considered less dangerous, those people could still. I mean, those women, if they want to make a name for themselves, and maybe they work their way down from a higher level and maybe have, still prior violence in their background, even though many of them might be there for white collar, or drug related charges, they could still enact violence on her. So it doesn't mean she's necessarily safer. Now, one of the things that did happen, and I'm circling back a little bit a few days, was Susie Wiles had some wild tales to tell to Vanity Fair. And man, she let a lot of so-called cats out of the bag. I mean, she really spilled the beans on many of the cabinet members and Trump himself, and she didn't hold back. And Trump didn't chastise her, didn't punish her. She's still there. But she tried to say, well, Trump was kind of a playboy. And yes, he was on the Epstein plane. Whoa, he's on the manifest. Interesting. Wow. I mean, that's a revelation that a lot of people were unaware of. Yeah, she goes after quite a few cabinet members, and she talks about how Bondi botched this whole Epstein, it really is a debacle and a fiasco at the highest level and to the nth degree. Now, Kash Patel, super bug eyes. It looks like deer in the headlights always. And you say, well, physically can't help that. Okay, fine, but a total piece of garbage that he's become. And I mean, Bill Belichick, as in his 70s, has. I mean, he can legally date someone in their 20s, and that's it's kind of weird, but he can do it. A government official, Patel, having this young girlfriend in I think Tennessee, and using FBI jets to have to go visit her and to have playtime, and then beef up her security. A little bit odd. But I was going to get to his deputy Bongino. And man, he's poo-pooed a lot of conspiracy theories. He's pushed the company line, the Trump cover-up line, and but he has said that there are some things that shocked him to his core by working there at the FBI. Now, how many of these revelations and these secrets will be told when he returns to a private citizen, which is going to happen in the next week or two, early January 2026. He's already formally resigned, and Trump said, well, I think he wants to get back to his radio role. So that'll be interesting to see how well received Bongino will be, and will he be pressed to tell the truth now about Epstein, about the Trump attempted assassination, the Charlie Kirk assassination, and various other things that have happened in 2025. But all the attacks on Margie Taylor Greene, which I've talked about before, which are unwarranted, absolutely reprehensible and despicable. But Tyrant Trump is saying that she's not MAGA, she's not America First, she's a traitor. Traitor because she pushed for the discharge petition. She wanted justice and transparency as it relates to the Epstein files. No, that's being patriotic. No, that's doing the right thing. And I'm going to go into much greater detail, but I did mention in previous podcasts that Trump is an imposter. His actions demonstrate he's not America First. And we know that MAGA, that term, Make America Great Again, came from Ronald Reagan. So that's, again, showing Trump's unoriginal nature, and that he's not making America great again. It's a fool's paradise. It's Trump's world, and we live in it. It's a reality show, and that he's not. Poll numbers are really basically as low as Biden. He says everything's a hoax and everything's fake. No, he's the faker, and he's the imposter, and he's the master hoaxer. And so we're going to continue to expose him. People say, well, if you keep pushing for Trump to be exposed, then we're going to be stuck with J.D. Vance. Well, then we continue exposing him. And whether it's a Democrat or Republican, if they're not following the Constitution, they're not putting our national interest first, and they're not doing a good job, or they're corrupt, or they're running a syndicate, or there's kickbacks, or there's nefarious and corrupt activity, then we will try to shut you down. But I'm telling you that the numbers, the polling data looks absolutely disastrous for the GOP. And all those people that Trump went on the vindictive retribution tour and his campaign will come back to haunt him, because these people are going to be out for blood, nearly literally, and they will impeach him again. And they will try to the best of their ability, if they have the numbers, to prosecute him. And that things are going to get really rough in about a year from now. If in fact Trump's health doesn't hold up, and it does seemingly is failing him, and his mind is also disintegrating like Biden's, but not to that degree yet. But there seems to be all the mental and physical signs appear to his impairment and his disabilities. At least that's my take. Well, we'll continue with new information on Epstein. There's many other subjects I do want to get to in the coming weeks. Grateful and thankful that I'm still here to tell the truth, and that you still listen, and that we continue partnering for truth and justice in the American way, and putting America truly first, and always trying to do the right thing no matter what, and no loyalty to any man or woman or prince or potentate or would be king or tyrant. It's the Constitution. It's the Creator God, it's faith and it's family foremost. The way I see it. Till we meet again, I'm Tom Donahue. Tom Donahue Reports. Have a great day.